wrestling.
Welcome to the Dits on Wrestling podcast. How long have I been waiting to say that to you guys? Like, it's been at least a year in the making, actually, in total. But then I decided to do it in October. It didn't happen because of work commitments, so it's been dragging for 5 months from that point. But here we are. Episode 1's finally here. This episode does come with a little bit of a caveat, and that being that it is currently 26 minutes past 2 in the morning as I'm recording this, so the enthusiasm that I originally intended to have on this is slowly fading away, and so is the coffee that I had about an hour ago. But where there's a will, there is most certainly a way, and I'm going to get this podcast squared away before my body completely shuts down. So if you happen to catch the teaser that I released 2 weeks ago, you'll already have a gist of what we're going to have on the podcast moving forward. Every single week, we're going to be covering the news and rumors from that week. There's always wrestling news going on, and there's certainly always wrestling rumors going on. The amount of rumors that circulate on Twitter is unbelievable, and the amount of people that pick up on it and believe it, even more so. So we'll be covering that, especially the rumors. Like, I love seeing rumors. They're absolutely hilarious. Some of them are absolute gems. And then we're going to cover Raw, SmackDown, NXT in highlight form. I won't be recapping the whole show. I tend to watch Raw and SmackDown on fast forward and just watch the last half of a match, watch all the promos, but generally the fast forward button is pressed. And that is just simply because I just don't have the time to watch the whole show from start to finish. So it wouldn't be a good idea to do a full recap of both shows if I'm not watching the whole show. So highlights are the way forward. And that is kind of code for I'm also very forgetful. When I try and remember what happened on Raw and SmackDown, like, unless it's huge or I'm reminded on social media, I cannot remember a thing until next week when they recap it on the next Raw or the next SmackDown. I go, oh yeah, I forgot that happened. So that's all you're going to get on here. You're going to get the highlights, not a full recap. There are better podcasts out there that can do that sort of thing. I listen to quite a lot of them myself. They do a damn sight better job than I could ever even hope to do when it comes to recapping the big shows. The only one I will actually do from start to finish are pay-per-views. I'll cover those as a bonus episode because I'm nice like that. I'm willing to give that to you guys. Go that extra mile. See, that's what you get with this podcast. You get a little bit of extra effort. Apart from Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, you're not going to get effort with that. You're just going to get highlights. And that's really where the simple side of the podcast is, what most wrestling podcasts do anyway. And Jesus Christ, like, before I started this, I actually had a look at, just out of curiosity alone, just to see how many wrestling podcasts were out there. And there's a lot. There is a lot of competition just to even be heard. Like, I am a small fish in a ginormous pond, the ocean. I'm a small fish in the bloody ocean. That's what I am. But of course, because you're all such lovely people, you're going to spread this around social media like wildfire. Outside of the news, the rumors, and any of the highlights of any shows that happened that week, this is where I want the podcast to become more interactive, because ultimately that's what I want it to be. So we're going to be including shout-outs, Q&As, eventually, and I mean eventually, this isn't going to be anytime soon, we're going to be moving on to guest spots, which I think is going to be really cool on here, because it'll include, you know, interviews with people in the industry, so the wrestlers, anybody that works backstage, that kind of thing. But the main thing that I want on here is getting the fans on here, because you guys all have different opinions about wrestling as much as I do, and it's always good to hear different people's takes on the thing that we all love. So that's what's so great about Twitter. Obviously, there's a lot of negativity on Twitter, which is sad, but that's social media these days. But I want this podcast to be a platform for anybody that wants to express themselves and are unable to do so because Twitter limits what you can say. So if there is anybody that wants to have their voice heard, this is your platform and this is what you can use. Even if it's just to put yourselves over, you dirty marks. So that is the podcast in a nutshell. It'll obviously chop and change as time goes on, because at the moment it's pretty raw. There is no set structure or anything like that at the moment, but as the episodes go on, they'll get better and better and better. So if you stick with me, you're going to get a good podcast eventually. See, I'm not even putting myself over right now. I'm just being a nice, humble guy. But let's forget about what's going to be coming up down the road. Let's just crack on and get into the news of the week. Here we go. So the news that's been dominating this week and last week, for that matter, was that Sasha Banks is unhappy with her position in the company following their tag title loss at WrestleMania, losing the titles to the Iconics. I personally don't see that as a bad thing, but there you go. She apparently had some kind of spat with somebody backstage, threw a hissy fit on the floor with Bayley. Like, I don't even know what to believe anymore. Like, there's so many different stories coming out of this, and it's just getting to that point where you actually start to think, is this a work? Are they trying to work us up into a frenzy so that she comes back and we all pop for it, or we react to it in a way that they are forcing us to? And I personally, I don't think it is a work, but that's what it's starting to feel like, especially now that Sasha's absence is being featured in storylines as well. Probably not so much now because Bayley has moved over to SmackDown. God knows, well, on paper, Sasha is still on Raw, but we'll see what happens as and when she comes back, if she comes back. But the gist of what everybody's saying is that she isn't happy, but I follow Sasha Banks on Instagram, and I can tell you now, she is not unhappy doing what she's doing right now. She's on some beach somewhere with, I think I saw Kalisto. I don't know what's happening there. I don't know if they're like the best of friends. I don't know. But they are hanging out together in some tropical place. I don't know where it is, but she seems happy. And whether that's just because she's away from WWE and that's why she's happy, who knows? But I don't see somebody who is in a bad place when I see these pictures. Now, when I was doing a little scroll through Twitter this morning, I saw the latest in this whole charade was that they're trying to tempt Sasha to come back with a big match. So they've said, you come back, we'll give you this. So whether that will entice her to return anytime soon, I don't know. But I actually think the women's division on Raw, or even if she did end up moving to SmackDown, on SmackDown, I think it's a worse place without her. I know there's a lot of people out there who have negative opinions about Sasha. I personally think that she's a good wrestler. Obviously, she's got botches behind her and stuff like that, and people accuse her of being dangerous in the ring. I can see past all that. It might be because I'm a big fan of NXT, and that's where that's where she came from. But I do want to see her come back, and I do want to see her do well and put into a spot that I think she can thrive in, and that starts at a heel turn. It's got to be a heel turn. She can't come back as a face, especially after all of this. She cannot come back as a face, and that's where they failed her, to be completely honest. Putting her in a tag team with Bayley. In fact, that whole Bayley stuff was an absolute disaster. Like, they should have pulled the trigger months before. And in the end, nothing came of it. Therapy. They had a bit of therapy with each other. It worked for Daniel Bryan and Kane. Doesn't work for Sasha Banks and Bayley. Hopefully the writers, because we always place faith in the writers, hopefully the writers can come up with something good for her to entice her back and just go, right, Sasha, this is what we want from you. You're going to be pushed. Come back. Fresh start. And we'll see how it goes. Now, this one is actually, it's bittersweet because I love seeing Luke Harper wrestle. Well, I say I like watching him wrestle every week. We haven't seen him for a while, which is why he's doing this. But every time I have watched him, he's been an absolute treat to watch. He's so good at what he does. And to see him move away from WWE is a little bit of a slap in the face, but you can completely understand where he's coming from. And that's the bitter side of it, is that I, as a WWE fan, I'm not going to be able to see him anymore in WWE. But the sweet side of things is that we're going to be able to see him move on to the independent scene or AEW or Impact, wherever he ends up going. It means we're going to get fresh matchups for him, somewhere where he can thrive. So, like, he's a good wrestler. He's a good talker. He's massive. He has a presence. Like, he will be huge somewhere else. And it's just a shame that WWE have dropped the ball with him. When you've got the weaker member of the Wyatt family in Eric Rowan's, like, he was in the main event scene for the last 3-4 months with Daniel Bryan. He's lackey, but he's still up there. And then you've got Luke Harper, who has been cleared from injury since February, not featured at all until WrestleMania, and then he's in the Worlds Collide tournament this week. It's just a shame to see him go, but the possibilities that he's now going to be faced with outside of WWE is exciting, very exciting for everybody. So yeah, that's the news. Luke Harper has requested his release from WWE. I haven't seen anything yet to say that they've granted it, but he has requested it. And here is the statement. As of this evening, which was a couple of days ago, I've requested a release from WWE. The past 6 years have been simply amazing journey around the world and back with lifelong friends and family. I'm proud of it all and proud to say I shared the ring with my co-workers. This decision, as difficult as it was, feels right for myself and WWE. My goal in the future is to continue to grow as a performer and person and continue to make my family proud. Thank you from the bottom to the top of WWE. Thank you to the fans for your undying support. Thank you, everybody. And you know what that means? That means this is serious. This is real. I actually do hope, deep down, that Luke Harper is granted this release. I think he will thrive somewhere else. And that seems to be the general consensus now for most of the people who are being either underutilized or creative, just not seeing their worth. I mean, look at the Revival. Like, they requested a release a couple of months back, and because they were under contract, they were unable to have that release granted. So they're a team that would thrive anywhere that they go. Just look at what they did in NXT. Like, they were one of the standout teams for that brand, and there are so many references to the Young Bucks and the Revival, and some people are really clamoring for that. I'm one of them. I'd love to see that match, but we're not going to see it for a while. But they are so underutilized on Raw, and that is the case with so many people. Another person who has hit the news this week, see, we don't really know what is happening with this one as of me recording this now. Alexander Wolf of Sanity fame has kind of said bye-bye to WWE. It was initially seen as, yeah, I'm requesting my release, just as Luke Harper did. And then within a couple of hours, it kind of turned around to say he's actually saying goodbye to the main roster and is moving back down to NXT. So those are the two stories that are linked to him at the moment. I personally think that it's going to be the latter. He's going to be back down to NXT, which is not a bad thing. Wolf is like, I mean, nobody really got a chance to see what he could do. Like the more casual people, anyway, once they moved up to SmackDown, because Sanity were just criminally misused on there, or not even used at all, as the case may be, which is insane. Like, they were so good in NXT. I was such a big fan of them, and just to see how they were treated on the main roster it just blows my mind, really boggles. But no, I think he'll thrive down in NXT, whatever he ends up doing down there. But that seems to be the way that it's going. But probably next week we might have something a bit more concrete for you. So when you tune in, because obviously you're going to come back, hopefully we'll have more on that story. Now, there's a lot more news and rumors out there that I could just cover for an entire show. Like, the thing could take up 2 hours. But that's your news for this week, and we're going to head straight over into the Raw highlights.
Welcome to Monday Night Raw!
So because Raw and SmackDown was dominated this week by the Superstar Shakeup, that is the focus of my highlights this week. Not much storyline stuff happened on either show in the grand scheme of things. It was more an introduction to people that had moved to either Raw or SmackDown, which is fine. That is what the Superstar Shakeup's for. That's what it highlights. And that's what I'm going to focus on this week. Now, according to WWE.com, the following superstars moved to Raw: AJ Styles from SmackDown, The Miz, Ricochet, Aleister Black, Andrade, Zelina Vega, Rey Mysterio, The Usos, Naomi, EC3, Lacey Evans, Eric Young, and Cedric Alexander. Now, the reason I haven't mentioned all of those there is because oh, dearie me. The Viking Experience. What the hell is that? This is a no swearing podcast. Like, as far as I can make that a reality, I don't really want to be swearing on this. I do swear a lot in real life. I just don't want this to be a swearing podcast. I nearly swore then, just saying the Viking Experience. What a terrible name that is. Like, what is even going through the mind of Vince McMahon when he pulled those guys out of NXT? See, I nearly swore again. This is something so insane. They went from War Machine, which is such a cool name, and then NXT, we're going to call them the War Raiders. Okay, we can get on board with that. We got used to it pretty quickly. They still had the whole war thing going on, so we were happy. And then out of nowhere, like, I did not expect it. And I saw it on social media before I even watched Raw. I just saw the Viking Experience and thought somebody had photoshopped the name bar that comes up. I was like, that's brilliant. The Viking Experience. And then I actually looked on WWE's social media account, and there it was. The Viking Experience was real. And we are, what, 5 days on, and I still cannot get my head around it. Like, and the thing is, they can't go back on this now. They've seen the backlash of it. Like, I don't know anybody who's happy with this name. Like, it's so bad that it's so funny. I just feel so bad for them. And that's not all. Not only has the team changed, and not only actually as well did they go up to the main roster without the NXT Tag Team Championships, which I think was a bit of a missed opportunity. I think that would have been really cool to get them up there and wearing those belts. They also changed the names of Hanson and Rowe, which is even more bizarre. Like, I know Vince loves his singular names. You know, Ali, Mustafa Ali was the latest victim of that. So we now call him Ali. Great. Now, Vince probably looked at Hansen and Rowe and thought, nah, if you want a Viking experience, you've actually got to change their names to something that sounds like a Viking. So we're going to go with Eric with a K and Ivar. What is that? I'm just looking at the names. I've got the article for WWE.com right in front of me right now, and you've got all the names that I just read out for people that have moved across, and then the odd ones out are Eric and Ivar of the Viking Experience. Like, oh dear, dear. It's just funny. It's just so funny. So this is where you'll see that my memory is absolutely terrible, because in fact I'm not even going to put this on me. I'm putting this on the whole Viking Experience thing. That whole thing was so bad that it has knocked any other memory I have of Raw out of my head. It's gone. We will eventually get used to it. Maybe. So yeah, what else happened on Raw this week during the shake-up? Lacey Evans finally wrestled. There you go. That's a thing that happened this week, which we've all been waiting for since we last saw her wrestle in the Royal Rumble. We've had to endure her walking up and down the ramp. In fact, sometimes she didn't even make it down the ramp. She just about turned and went back through the curtain. We finally saw her wrestle this week against Natalya, picking up the win. It wasn't that great, to be honest. For somebody who has been kept away from the ring for so long, you kind of wanted to see a little bit more from Lacey. Now, I've seen her down in NXT, and she was a good hand down there, but she still had a long way to go. But that's fine, because that's what NXT was for. But then she was prematurely called up to the main roster. Again, that's happened, fair enough. Then they did this whole sauntering down the ramp and just completely trolling everybody in doing so. So everyone is kind of thinking, is this going somewhere? Are we ever going to see her wrestle? And then we finally see her wrestle. It's a bit of a downer, with the exception of her moonsault. That was decent, apart from the fact that she probably broke Natalya's ribs with her knees. If I tried that, I would cease to exist. This podcast would not be happening right now. If I tried to moonsault, I would die. So the fact that she can do that, kudos to you, Lacey Evans. Kudos to you. Now, really, from there, the only highlight I can think of was a moment of bliss with Sami Zayn. Just for the crowd alone. Montreal is always a good place to go for wrestling, and they did not disappoint for Sami Zayn last night. Hometown boy coming back. He did a little bit of a heel promo last week, so that's the direction he's heading in, it seems. And this week, we got a bit more of that, except he played up the crowd for what seemed like 20 minutes. But no, it was really fun to see the crowd singing along to Sammy's theme song and the Olay chants. It was a lot of fun, and I'm really, really digging Sammy's direction now, and I really hope they keep up this momentum with him and it results in something good for him, and I'm sure it will. Look at me putting faith in the writers again. How about that? Now, as I said, because it's a Superstar Shakeup, not a great deal storyline-wise happened on Raw, so that is Raw. They are the highlights for me this week. Next week, it's going to be business as usual. We're going to be able to see where these people are going to go, where the direction is. Probably don't expect much from EC3 or Eric Young. In fact, you're actually probably going to end up seeing them as a tag team, knowing how WWE seems to operate these days. So that's Raw. And it's odd because it's a quiet week, but it's not a quiet week because it's the Superstar Shakeup. It's a very strange week for Raw and SmackDown for that matter. Speaking of SmackDown, let's get into their highlights, shall we?
Welcome everyone to SmackDown Live.
straight away, let's get into who moved to SmackDown. And it's a good list. It's a very good list, especially for the women's division. And, well, actually saying that, look at the list. Even the males have triumphed over Raw here, potentially. So from the top, we got Roman Reigns, Finn Balor, Elias, Bayley, Ember Moon, Kairi Sane, Lars Sullivan, which is strange because Lars was also on Raw last night, so I don't know what happened there. Very confusing. Buddy Murphy from 205 Live, yes. Liv Morgan, RIP Riot Squad. Chad Gable, not so much RIP Rude and Gable. Apollo Crews, Mickey James, and Heavy Machinery. So they're your Superstar Shaking-Uppers for SmackDown. Now, what I did wonder, and didn't place any logic to it whatsoever, obviously we saw Finn Balor move over to SmackDown, Intercontinental Champion, of course, and I kind of questioned, are SmackDown actually going to have 2 mid-card titles now? I thought that'd be a little bit of a strange move, but hey, it's new, it's different, see how it goes. But it turns out that Samoa Joe was actually supposed to have a segment on Raw, but he's got the flu this week, so he wasn't able to be at the show to film it, do it, whatever it is. What I should have actually added to my Raw list is Samoa Joe, but he's not actually on WWE.com on their list, so who knows? But that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing Samoa Joe's moving over to Raw with the United States Championship. But I guess we'll find out on Monday. I mean, that's where Braun is, and Braun came to attack him last week. It looks like move Joe to Raw, that's going to start up again. And, it should be fun. Now, I actually remember a little bit more with SmackDown, purely because I've only just watched it today. With highlights, I've got 3 highlights, and I'm going to kick off with the best one, and that is Kevin Owens. Like, Kevin Owens, for me, was the MVP of SmackDown this week. He showed a different side of his character, and we knew he was funny anyway, but, like, to see him this kind of funny, like the messing around, joking around, it was refreshing, and, it was really fun to see him become Big O with the New Day. Very good stuff. I don't know if it's going to last or if it was just for that week. Injuries are terrible, very, very terrible, but people are given the opportunity then to capitalize on them, and that's what Kevin Owens done by jumping into Big E's spot and becoming Big O. Like him eating the pancakes. He's just kind of like, I don't know if it's even scripted or if he just comes up with them. He was just like, I don't even like pancakes. Small stuff like that. It just pops me. Love it. We also had a tremendous match, especially for TV, between Finn Balor and Ali. I hate not saying Mustafa. It's going to take a while to get used to it. So, yeah, Finn Balor and Ali, they wrestled a match this week, and it was great. So this really highlights what the Superstar Shakeup can do, not only for the wrestlers themselves, giving them, some fresh ground, fresh opportunities, but also gives us fresh matchups to look forward to. And having seen this match, I really, really want to see a program between these two now. I don't know if they've ever faced each other before outside of WWE. I don't think they have, but I want more of this. It was and it was close. It was close as well. Ali was made to look strong throughout that whole thing, but that drop kick to Ali in the corner to set up the coup de grace to finish the match, he sold that really well. That was tremendous. The drop kick it's always good to see when somebody sells the absolute hell out of it. They don't just kind of just fall into the turnbuckle. They throw themselves into the turnbuckle. It looks a lot more lethal, and Ali was able to do that this week. But no, that's another highlight for me. Such a good match, and a potentially exciting feud. Not even a feud. It could be just one based on respect. A program. It would be nice to see a program between them two. And if you're on creative, the ideas should be swimming around in your head, because those guys will make magic for you. So hopefully more of that, please. And then, of course, we had Vince McMahon's big announcement. SmackDown Live's biggest acquisition in its history. Now, I don't know if it means like SmackDown's history as a whole, as in going back like 18, 19 years, whatever it is, or if it's just SmackDown Live's history, which is like 3 years. So whichever one they're on about, that statement is more relevant to one than the other. But I digress. Vince McMahon came out. I always love seeing Vince on TV. Like, I know there's complaints about, there's too much McMahon on TV. I agree. There is too much McMahon on TV. But because we don't see Vince that much anymore, I accept anything that Vince does. And Vince has been great this year, especially the stuff with Kofi, and to a lesser extent, the stuff with Becky. And he came out, and I thought it was going to be Brock Lesnar. That's what I had in my head before any of, like, as soon as I saw Vince McMahon is set to announce this big acquisition, I was like, nah, it's got to be Brock Lesnar. It's not going to be anybody else. But I say we got trolled. I got happily trolled when Elias came out, like so happy to see Elias on SmackDown again, freshening things up for him, and it was funny to see him come out, and he came down to the ring, kind of played up to the whole thing, and then you were kind of like, that's not the big acquisition, is it? There's going to be somebody else, and it's probably not going to be Brock Lesnar anymore, and there's really only one other person that it could be that could really, you could really call the biggest acquisition in SmackDown Live history. And of course it ended up being Roman Reigns. Again, I'm very happy to see Roman on SmackDown. He's been a mainstay on Raw for God knows how many years now, whether he was a single star or with the Shield. It's just nice to see him on the blue brand, and he's got so many new wrestlers that he can face now, and I hope it does something for him with regards to the fans and the crowd reaction that is starting to creep in again. Obviously, he came back from the leukemia and just cheered across the board, and rightfully so. He's overcome this horrendous disease, and we were all very, very happy to see him come back. But I think as time is going on, people are starting to forget about that and remembering, oh yeah, it's Roman Reigns, we should be booing him. And that's where we are now. Like, you can start to hear those boos creeping in. So I'm hoping by moving over to SmackDown and having some fresh matches, and he punched Vince in the face, so there's that as well. Hopefully it can get him over again, like, completely. He's always gonna have boos regardless, but hopefully this gets him, I'd say, at least 90% approval rating across the audience or across the universe. But I can kind of see how the whole thing, I mean, remember back when Sheamus was the WWE champion a couple of years ago, they used Vince with Roman then to get him over, and it worked. Like, when Roman won the title, the audience popped, and that's a credit to Vince that he's able to do that, and that could be what they're going for here. They've gone, actually, we can start hearing those boos come back in. Vince, you're up. Although saying that, nobody would say that to Vince, because Vince would be the one doing it. He'd say, no, Vince, I'm up. But no, I think there's going to be some good stuff to look forward to, whether that means that there's going to be a Roman versus authority angle, even though technically we're supposed to be the authority. Interesting. So there might be a Roman versus the McMahons angle coming up, but regardless of what we see, the Superstar Shakeup has produced some goods this week. And if I had to pick a winner for who won overall between Raw and SmackDown, I'm going to go with SmackDown. They lost some big names. I mean, AJ, their number one guy, gone, replaced by Raw's number one guy. So that's just a like for like swap, so they're not really losing out there. Samoa Joe is a big loss. I loved seeing Joe on SmackDown, and it was only last year that he moved over from Raw, so I wish he had a little bit more time on the show, but he'll thrive over on Raw. But we gained Finn Balor. I say we. See, look, I speak for SmackDown Live because I prefer SmackDown over Raw. I always have, especially when you look back at the Ruthless Aggression era. I'm a SmackDown guy, but no, SmackDown has Finn Balor now, so it hopefully means good stuff for him as well. It definitely means good stuff for SmackDown. But no, I think SmackDown won in the grand scheme of things, but we'll see how this post-WrestleMania season starts to play out, especially now that the superstars are in their different places, and that's where we'll really determine who got the better end of the deal. But at the moment, SmackDown Live. And there's your highlights for the week in wrestling, well, WWE anyway. I haven't watched NXT this week, which is very, very unlike me. Usually I miss the post takeover shows because they're just essentially exhibition matches, or it's just a whole lot of nothing, really. I mean, I eventually watching them eventually in the end, but I missed that one, and I missed this week as well. Very, very unlike me, but I will be watching it at some point. So next week I will ensure that I watch NXT so I can cover it and go through the show with you guys. But that is your highlights for the week. We're nearly done. We're 39 minutes in, and we've probably got another 10 to go. So strap in just for those last 10 minutes, because this is your time now. This is where I'm just going to throw some recommendations out, and you can do with them as you see fit. Like, you can follow them on Twitter if you want to, or you can download their podcasts, or you can just ignore what I say and call me an absolute mentalist and don't do any of that. It's up to you. This is a wrestling community. Like, you guys get to say as much as I do, but these are the people who I recommend for you this week. Recommends this week and for the first week. It couldn't be anybody else, to be honest. It was always going to be these guys first over everybody, simply because I've been associated with them for the last 2 years. They're a good bunch of guys, and it's run by a really good dude, somebody who works his absolute arse off to get it where it is today. I'm talking about SLTD Wrestling. They're primarily a website, sltdwrestling.com, but they also have a Twitter account, as most of us do. They're also on Instagram and Facebook at SLTD Wrestling. If you're interested in opinion pieces or predictions to upcoming shows, they put together any of the big shows in WWE. They always put a whole week devoted to that one pay-per-view. It's always good stuff. They also do, what ifs. Each individual writer they have in that team has their own little gimmick. It's just really good stuff on that site, and I really could not recommend it anymore. And it's all thanks to my second recommendation, and that is at Tybo Talks on Twitter. Tybo Ledson, he's known by. He is the owner of SLTD Wrestling. He's such a good guy. Like, he knows a lot about wrestling, which helps. And he manages this whole team all by himself, and fair play to him. Like, the workload that he has just by running that site alone is mind-boggling. I wouldn't be able to do it, so hats off to the guy. When I eventually have these guest spots squared away and how to do it, I'm going to get him on, because I think his story is quite a good one. It's quite inspiring, to be honest with you, and I think it would be really cool for him to come on and share his story, how he's grown this website from nothing to where it is now. And it's definitely worth giving the guy a follow, giving SLTD a follow on Twitter, and just checking out the website. And just, it might not be your cup of tea, but there is something on there for absolutely everybody. So if it's not your cup of tea, then to be honest, you're not looking hard enough. There's something, honestly, for everybody on there. And that's just not me being biased. Even I'm on there. Even I've written some stuff for SLTD. It's a long time ago, but you can find it in the archives on there. But no, SLTD Wrestling and Tybo are both worth the follow, and they are my DOW recommends first two this week. Number 3 is a little bit of a cheat, to be honest with you. I could name all of these podcasters in a wanna, and I'm not going to, because then I lose ground on what I could recommend in later weeks. So I'm going to cheat and just go for their higher power, if you will. At Brainbuster Radio, or just Brainbuster Radio, they're on Twitter as at Brainbuster Radio. They're a podcast network. They've just started 2 weeks ago. They've got a really good collection of podcasts together. They've got a really good thing going on. There doesn't seem to be any hidden incentives with them. It's they're just doing something for the benefit of the people who are a part of it. And that some of the best wrestling podcasts that you will hear are a part of Brainbuster Radio. So if you're interested in looking for a new podcast that you're tired of listening to the old samey kind of stuff, then genuinely you're going to hear something that you haven't heard before in one of the podcasts under the Brainbuster Radio umbrella. Personally, for me, and again, biased, a fellow Plymouthian, the At Omega Luke podcast, give him a listen. Like, he's all about the fantasy booking. Every single week he delivers the goods, and you will not be disappointed at all with getting on board with his podcast, or even his YouTube channel as well. He's got some good stuff on there. He's got Fantasy Booking Faction going on YouTube at the moment. He's got League Table, so there's that. And yeah, he seems like a good guy as well. So Brainbuster Radio, give them a follow, check out all the podcasts on there. But for me specifically, give Omega Luke a shout, give him a follow, give him a subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, whatever. Give Brainbuster Radio a subscribe on iTunes. Yeah, you're not going to be disappointed by anything you hear with that podcast network at all, I can tell you now. And last but not least, definitely not least, is at Dude McIntyre over on Twitter. Now, this guy is a genuine treat. He comes all the way from Australia, and he honestly, he acts like our big brother on Twitter. Like, if there's anybody giving us crap on Twitter for anything, and he's active with you, like, he will fight your corner, and it's fantastic. But what he does outside of Twitter, he does commentary with his local promotion, which I think is really cool. And he knows his stuff when it comes to wrestling, and I followed him for a good while now, and I've actively followed him for a good while now, and it's rare when I keep that up for so long with any account, to be honest, because I follow so many people. It's like many accounts get lost in the shuffle, but Dude's has always been up there at the top. So he's an entertaining account. He's got your back. More importantly, if anybody starts to give you any trouble online on Twitter, and he calls you out as well, and I like that. He calls BS on a lot of stuff, so he's just a good guy to have around on your Twitter feed, and amongst your followers as well. So give him a follow. I can't recommend him enough. Yeah, you're not going to be disappointed with that one. And that's who I've got to recommend this week. So just the 3 people this week. I say 3 people, so 2, a website, a podcast network, and 2 people. So there you go. So 4, really. Next week, there's going to be more next week. I promise you there's going to be more next week. So I'm going to actually delve into tweets and stuff like that, get those on there, my favorite tweets. These recommendations have essentially acted as the shout outs as well, so there you go. I've multitasked there. I've hit two birds with one stone. Talent. Hardly. But there you go. That is it. That's the end of the episode. We finally made it to the end of the episode. And I'm going to level with you. It's currently 5:30 in the morning. This has taken me a long time to throw together. Like, I haven't even edited this yet. I don't even know when I'm going to do that. It's you could tell that this was my first pop at my own podcast, the fact that it's taken me this long. But it will get better over time, I assure you. And I will get better at throwing this thing together quickly, because 4 hours has tired me out slightly. But it's a work in progress. As I've said, it's raw. We will get to a point where we are smashing this every single week, hopefully. But what I will say is, before I sign this off, is if you're looking at starting a podcast or starting a YouTube channel or even just starting a Twitter account like that's based on wrestling, whatever it is, somewhere that you can show your creative outlet to a wider audience, just don't hesitate to do it. Just jump in there and do it. I've been back from my stint away with work, for 4 weeks now. I could have started this in the first week back easily. I have the equipment. I've upgraded. I had a laptop. I now have an iMac now, which is fantastic. Does everything I needed to do, but I had a laptop, so I had no excuse. I had the software, everything I needed, and I chose not to do it, and I just let it slide and slide and slide and slide, putting up excuses. I go, I'm tired now, I've got a headache, yeah, whatever. I just couldn't pull myself into it because I was just concerned about what other people would think about it, or if people would even listen to it. And that's not really what I wanted to do this for in the first place. This is just something that I enjoy. I love wrestling. I watch wrestling all the time. For me, this is just a hobby. And if one person listens to it, that's a bonus. That's how I look at it now, especially now that I'm at the end of recording this podcast, because I can tell you there were stints halfway through this when I deleted a track 12, 13, 14, 15 times before getting it right. And I was just like, I'm struggling with this. Why am I even bothering? It's not the way to think. Like, if you want to do something, just do it. Like, at the end of the day, who cares what anybody else thinks? Who cares if you don't get people listening to it, or even if you just get one person listening to it? That's still one person that's taking time out of their day to listen to you, to watch you, to look at your tweets, like whatever it is. So if there's something that you want to get amongst and be creative and do something a little bit different, something out of your comfort zone. Like, this is certainly out of my comfort zone. Like, I've never done anything like this before, and here I am recording my first episode, just about to complete my first episode, get it out on the streets. And now that I'm at the end of it, I feel good about it, and I look forward to doing more. But up until this point, it was just a sense of dread, and I wish I didn't have that dread because it took some of the excitement away from it. So if you're looking to do something, do it. That's all I can say. And on that note, I'm going to bed because I am absolutely shattered. So you guys can do me a massive favor, really. It'll literally take 1 second, maybe 2, potentially 3, depending on your internet connection. Could be 4 seconds. Hop over to iTunes and give me a subscribe on there. Give me a 5-star rating as well while you're there, because why wouldn't you? Because it's literally, you press subscribe and then you just scroll down a little bit and there's your opportunity to 5-star review. Thank you very much. And leave a review as well. Reviews are always nice to hear. Always nice to hear. And with that said, I am, of course, available on iTunes, but you can also find me on Spotify. Just type in Dits on Wrestling, there I am. Or if you don't listen to your podcast through those two, you can head over to YouTube, where this will be uploaded as well on my YouTube channel. So again, just type in Dits on Wrestling, there I'll be. Whilst you're there, and on Spotify, just follow, subscribe, do all that stuff. Support the podcast, because every little helps. Sorry, Tesco, I'll nick that one today. And that's it. That's me. I am tired. I feel like I'm seeing things at 5:30 in the morning, which I shouldn't be seeing, and I need to go to bed. And that's what I'm going to do. So, episode 1 is in the bag. That's it. The hard work is now done. Everything else will just fall into place. But no, thank you for listening, guys, and I will see you next week.